Hi, this is Matt Donegan, Challenger Stories, talking about how businesses start and how they go on to conquer. I'm here with Daniel from Biosynergy. Daniel, tell me about the business. Tell me about how you got started.
I won't go on for too long because I know time is precious, but I started the company effectively in 96. We registered the company in 97, and I was in my very early 20s. And it started off really out as a passion project. I got the bug for fitness, inspired by the gladiators, and I was looking for products that would support me in my goal. And everything I tried just let me down, whether it be in terms of the results, the taste, the flavor, and so on. So I was on course to become a lawyer. I had a place at law school. I decided to pack that in, qualified as a nutritionist and an SAQ coach, and came up with an idea for a product. Sense checked it with some very high profile scientists at very well known universities, and basically launched the product from my parents' loft, and basically spent the first probably 4 or 5 years driving around with stock in the back of my Escort 1.4L with an A to Z in yellow pages, because this was kind of pre GPS, pre Google, pre Amazon, believe it or not, pre even internet. We had a website which was on dial up back in the late 90s, and effectively that was it. It was just hustling and trying to make a profit and make ends meet. I was very lucky. I was able to kind of work from my parents' loft and use their dining room for packing and their garage for storage. So I kept my overheads pretty low. And then there was a bit of a breakthrough in terms of getting a lot of sports teams on board. Initially Arsenal, and then some big retailers like Lily White's, Selfridges, John Bell and Croydon at the time, and then Debenhams. And with that kind of confidence, I decided to strike out on my own a little bit, and actually decided to rent an office above my dad's retail shop, which I was in for quite a while. And I took on my first members of my staff, my team. And at one point, I had Pace and Power working for me. So a guy called Ryan Pace and another guy called Stuart Power. So it was like the
Fantastic.
perfect it was completely unintentional, but what great surnames for companies selling sports and health and nutrition. And then from there, we kind of broke into 2002 kind of retail with people like Tesco. And I guess it's just been a lot of ducking and diving ever since. I
Mm.
think the thing that's really different now, and I'm sure you advise your clients on that, is that the whole idea of a business plan was still quite, I'm sure they were around in the 90s, but it wasn't necessarily something that people did as a powerful course. It was something that, perhaps a bit more highbrow. And I think a lot of it, again, was designed around making profit, which obviously nowadays, a lot of businesses, the objective is not profit, it's about scale. So, yeah, been a very interesting nearly 30 years. And a lot has changed in that time.
So it's almost like a 30-year overnight success. By the sounds of
I'm
it.
still waiting for the success bit, but the overnight bit's still going on.
So what I find really interesting and why your business really relates to Challenger Stories is that you literally started it in your home or
Yeah,
in your folks' home, literally on the kitchen table, and then you've grown the business to get into major multiples. You've developed a really fantastic brand and you've got a great niche in the marketplace. So when it comes to taking a business right from the beginning, from
yeah,
starting up right through to becoming a market leader, you've got a lot of that really baked into the business already and your history. So that journey is quite 30 years. It's quite a long journey, and you've
yeah.
had some huge challenges on the way. Where is the product positioned at the moment? Because there's a lot of nutrition supplements in the marketplace, but
Yeah,
you come from a pretty scientific background. Clearly, you're a trained nutritionist,
yeah.
but you've got a bit of a different spin on the market, haven't you? Because you're not one of the big online players, but
No,
you've got a really defined product. So tell me what you've done.
I mean, what I believe our points of difference are is our authenticity and our kind of rigor to quality. And also from day one, it's always, I mean, we never used the term sustainability, but it's always been about sustainability as well. So I think if we're not the only one, we're one of very few brands in our category that have got B Corp status.
Yeah.
We continue to manufacture everything in the UK. We continue to work very closely with universities. So we've got a project ongoing at the moment with Essex University on one of our new products that we've launched, and we want to. We know the science is there, and we've launched the product on the back of the existing science. But what we want is something that's independent and specific to our own product. So we're kind of very focused on that, and we're very focused on quality. So often, I'll use I think the sofa market as an example. I think some big sofa retailers in the past got into trouble for saying, normal price, blah, special price, X, but the normal price, nobody ever bought it at the normal price.
That's right.
It was always on a special price.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite pervasive in the category that we're in. So we rather than doing this kind of price cutting thing, we think that we do an excellent product at a good value price every day. Mm-hmm. And then we do reward loyalty as well. And I think that the problem is, as I mentioned earlier, where you've got businesses that are extremely well funded and their goal is turnover, they often go down a price reduction route to get bums on seats. And that actually has a negative effect on the whole category, because there's other businesses, whether it's my own or other small privately owned businesses, which don't have that kind of third-party cash runway to buy customers. We have to do it in the traditional way of buying a product and selling it, hopefully at a profit, and that profit needs to then cover, and not only the cost of the goods, but everything that sustains the business and allows that to develop and build for the future. So I say that, so it's quality, innovation, sustainability, and authenticity. I think for me, that's what I strive for, and also to make it happen. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does to an extent, but there's, I mean, I know a little bit about the products that you guys sell, and I also know that you've taken some further strides in developing the product so that it is virtually customized to the individual. And some people saying there are some businesses who claim to do that. How do you deliver that? Because you do it. So how do you deliver it?
Yeah, I mean, what we've done is we've launched the product that's currently undergoing this university, so is our DNA product. So what we do with that, and again, anybody who's starting out in fitness or has been in fitness for years, I think it's a really interesting product to allow people to get the most out of life, because you and I talking today, we're 99.9999% exactly the same as we are with every other human on the planet. But it's that 0.0001% that makes you, and me. And if you and I were exercising together and doing the same things, by accident, we might both get the same results. But the likelihood is it wouldn't work for both of us.
Yes.
Because fundamentally, you're going to be slightly different to me. So the type of training you might need to do, or the kind of diet you need to follow, or the supplements you might need to take would be fundamentally different to the ones that I needed. Yeah. So by giving people this advice up front, by taking the DNA test, they're able to personalize their nutrition and fitness journey to meet their specific needs, and therefore get the best outcome possible.
And Daniel, is there something else in that as well? In that as we age, or our fitness changes, or we have different health issues that enter our lives, nutrition changes there as well. I mean, I've personally been through something where I was of a certain fitness and I had a certain muscle mass, and then something happened, and therefore and that changed, and actually I started to react differently nutritionally.
Yeah.
So presumably the DNA product that you have, you could keep on testing, and you could do it at various times, and it might change.
No, your DNA never changes. So it's fixed from the day you're conceived to the day you die. Yeah. What you can do is something called epigenetics. We're one of a few companies that do that. So what that does is, if your DNA is kind of your instruction manual, Your epigenetics is your MOT.
Right.
So you might have a wonderful brand new car, you've serviced it very well, and you do a MOT and it passes flying colours and so on. Equally, you could have this amazing brand new car and you keep hitting the curb, you've been putting the wrong petrol in, you haven't been servicing it properly, and then when you go to get your MOT, it fails. So that's kind of what epigenetics does. It looks at how closely you're following your optimum diet and lifestyle, and then it gives you a score. So it'll give you a biological age versus your chronological age, and memory age versus your chronological age, and so on. So if there's a wide variance between, let's say you were 50 chronologically, but biologically you were 60, but say go back to the instruction manual and read chapter 6 on diet and supplementation, try and follow that, and then do that again in 6 to 8 weeks' time. And hopefully what you see is you're actually now 55.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I get it. I get it. So that's fascinating with the product that you're developing and the marketplace that you're in. You originally you developed the offering and the brand more for the retail space, didn't you?
Yeah.
In getting into the multiples and on shelves. You didn't move as much into the online space, and that's something that you've changed, isn't it? How are you adapting to that?
I mean, I think, again, it's hard, depending on the age of the listener, to cast your mind back to the late 90s. But we had a website. The problem was, and this is kind of hilarious for those who remember it, if somebody placed an order on our website, I'd then have to call them back and say, "Hi, John, thank you for ordering your Creatine Plus. Can I take your credit card details? I've got two options for you. One, I can write it down on the carbon sheet, or two, I've got a PDQ machine. I can put it through for you straight away."
Yeah.
So that meant it was very difficult to scale that business. And also back then in the 90s, retailers, particularly the big guys, they saw e-commerce as competition because they hadn't embraced it.
Yeah.
I think, if you look at, probably Tesco might have been the first, big retail company to embrace that. And that was probably, I'm guessing, around 2005-6 kind of time, probably around the time they launched Clubcard or something. And also the channels for marketing were very different, or much smaller. So you had, if you had lots of money, you went on TV. If you didn't have quite so much money, you went on radio or outdoor. And if you had a bit less money, you'd do magazines and maybe direct mail. Those were pretty much the marketing mix in the 90s, probably up through to the early 2000s. So the quickest way to reach lots of people at scale was through retail. And luckily or unluckily, I guess, we were very successful in our early years in getting onto those retail shelves. So whilst other people who were coming into the market, say mid 2005 onwards, they saw, I think we probably had broadband by that stage, or at least some kind of internet connection and PayPal, which meant that actually the barrier to entry was lower, and that these people could go direct to that customer and use Google, which Google wasn't even. I remember, I think 98 or something, 99, somebody said, "Oh, there's this new thing launching called Google. If you type your name in it, it will find information about you." So, the only real option was retail. And by the time that e-tail was an opportunity, we were so entrenched in retail that we didn't put, although we always have had a website, we never gave it a lot of love and focus. But we've always adopted new technology very early. So I remember, I can't remember the dates now, let's say 2008 or 9, when Facebook launched, we managed to get 8,000 followers, which made us the most followed sports nutrition brand in the world. And at the time, we were the #1 brand on Amazon in the UK. So they said to me from Seattle, "Would you come out and tell us how you've grown your social media?"
Wow.
Which is mind-boggling to think that, 8,000 people made a wave all the way over to Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was then, and now I think you've got less than 8 million.
Yeah.
Probably not considered to be even remotely successful.
Yeah. Times certainly have changed. Talking about changing times,
Yeah,
so this is about the conversation is partly about the challenges that you've had along the way.
yeah.
The Is there a moment in the development of the business where if you could wind back the clock and say, there's that critical moment, if we'd done something different, it would have had a completely different spin on the business and you'd end up in a very, very different place. Was there a moment like that
I
in your
think
story?
there's been so many. I mean, I think like I said, we could have embraced e-commerce whilst we were still growing the retail a lot earlier.
Yeah.
We probably could have expanded the team a little bit more than we did initially. I probably could have found some co-founders. I mean, I think people underestimate, and again, you'll know this from how difficult it is as a solo founder. I think is the term people use, as opposed, most the businesses that I know of where I've got a personal relationship with somebody, and there's new businesses that have started and then been successful. They've either had somebody who's been in corporate and really learnt the ropes, and then on the back of that have been able to start a business, having made all the mistakes that the rest of us make at somebody else's expense, and more often than not have found it easier to raise money because they've worked for a big blue chip company, and or both. They've got that kind of experience, and they've then said, right, I'm a great marketeer. What I need is a finance person, a salesperson, and now probably a digital person.
Yeah.
And we're going to be the founders, and we're going to divide up those big jobs amongst the four of us or the three of us. And I think that would have been one thing I would have done differently. I think I probably would have raised money at a very early stage when I was in that kind of growth, big growth curve in the early 2000s. God, there's so many things. I'd chosen different different retailers to work with, chosen different manufacturers. There's the whole. I could talk for hours about all the mistakes that I've made and things that I could redo.
I mean, there is something about making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. You don't learn from the victories a lot of the time. You learn from the mistakes. So and every great business is going to go through lots of changes. It's going to make lots of errors. And I really see your point about having the right team around you, whether that's co-founders or whether it's people supporting you inside the business. I mean, you've had some big supporters of the business, haven't you, that have been involved. Can you speak about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, we in 2005, Sebco came on board as chairman, and he actually did invest some money at that stage. And the idea was, with his investment and him as chairman, we would go on and raise a lot of money, and we were literally that close to it happening. And then this is how fickle things are. He was obviously in the bid for the Olympic Games at the time, and he was chairman, and we had a very large venture capital fund offer us, I could be wrong, I'll say 10 million at that time for a decent sized bit of equity, which 10 million in 2005, 6, I mean, it's still an awful lot of money now, but it was
a lot then, yeah.
A hell of a lot then. It was probably like the equivalent of 30 or 40 now.
Yeah.
And what they liked, they loved the story, they loved the product, they loved the brand, they loved the retail, but then they also saw that having Seb as chairman of this business would help them attract an exit probably down the line and so on. And then the Daily Mail, God bless them, they wrote a story. Sebco gets top job at company selling banned sports supplements. I didn't know anything about it. It was print. It didn't go to digital. And basically in the story, it said somebody had obviously gone to company's house, seen he'd been appointed. And it said basically he got chairman job. And then it said in some countries, some sports supplements are banned. Nothing to do by synergy, nothing to do with our products, nothing to do with me, nothing to do with Seb. But it was a sensational kind of bit of clickbait. Obviously, Seb was in the process of trying to win London 2012. So his people rang up and said, look, we can't be associated with this. He's got to step down today. I said, look, can it wait a week? We're literally like this to this deal. It's got to happen today. We've got to be able to say on Monday morning that he's no longer chairman. And we're going to send over a resignation letter by fax. Obviously, fax in those days. So that happened. He's still a shareholder, but he did resign. And with that investment went away.
Wow. So that was a real sliding doors moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was that, if we look at the whole, again, going back to the challenge of running a business and really fighting hard to get it up into that market leader position, was that the toughest moment that you've had in the business, or was there anything even more
far
challenging
worse
than
stuff than that. I mean, that was probably the most frustrating, or one of the most frustrating. But there's much worse things that have happened. There was a retailer, probably the largest retailer in the UK, and we were going like this with them. We basically created the sports nutrition category for them. Yeah. The buyer left, and there was a new buyer, and they said, "Oh, you've done really well out of us." I was like, "Yeah, I've worked very hard. We've put a lot of effort in. We've created the category." I said, "Look, we're doing a category review. We're looking to grow it." I said, "Fantastic. Can you write us a plan how you would grow the category?" I said, "Sure." So I did that, submitted it, and he goes, "Oh, we've looked at your plan. It's brilliant." I was like, "Great." And he goes, "I've also been looking that you never paid a listing fee with us." It's like, "Listing fee? What's that?" "Well, no, we'd like a listing fee backdated to your launch, and we're looking for about £100,000 for that." It's like, "I've got £800,000 in stock sitting in a warehouse for you to meet your demand. We're a small business. I can't, maybe I can do this or do that or do the other." And he goes, "Oh, all right, don't worry about it. I'll get back to you." And all of a sudden the orders started drying up. And I'm looking at this stock metaphorically in the warehouse, and I'm wondering what's going on here. And I get an email. "We've just done our range review, and we've decided we're not going to continue with your brand, but we're going to be introducing all the other brands that you've recommended. Thank you so much for your assistance."
Wow.
So all of a sudden we've gone from here to here. And obviously when you're with a big retailer, one of the expectations is, quite rightly, that you can deliver stock on time, in full, every time.
Yeah.
So we had to hold a lot of inventory to meet that demand. And at the time, that was probably 70-80% of our business was this particular customer. And literally the lights went off. It's a bit like when we had similar issues when COVID hit. And probably at that point, I probably should have thought a bit more about e-commerce, but I think it was still a little bit early. And yeah, that was definitely a difficult one, because that caused a lot of cash flow and other kind of problems. And thankfully at the time I had a credit card and an overdraft, and I was able to keep moving things around. But eventually I kind of managed to dig myself out of that one.
It sounds like you went from the position of being a partner to this retailer to a supplier to the retailer. And that's, a lot of businesses don't quite understand the difference between the two. Partnership, you were helping growing that category for them. It's got
a lot of it's to do with personality. It's not the retailer specifically. It was the woman that originally, took a punt on us. She really was invested in the success of the category. She was invested in the success of our brand. She really gave me a mini MBA on retail and product and branding and so on and so forth. And then the next person in was very transactional.
Yeah. And you often get that inside the big multiples. So
yeah,
that's often the case. I mean, you've got a very recognizable brand. I know it from the supermarket shelves. I know it from the in the nutritional space, and it's a very respected brand.
Thank you.
So the transition onto online, did you find that relatively simple? Was it a completely different dynamic, different? Clearly, it's a different business model, right?
Yeah,
But
I
how
mean,
did you transition that over? Because they're very, very different skill sets.
look, like I said, we'd always had the website. I think it was just about, and we're actually doing it now. I think the real change will probably happen over the next 18, 24 months, where we've just re-platformed to Shopify. We kind of gave in and joined everybody else on that one.
Yeah.
But it is a different skill set. It's the whole stock side of it's different. The relationship with the customer is different. The levers you need to pull are very different. And I think, like the last web update we did prior to this one was 4 years ago,
Mm,
which in the scheme of the internet is
mm.
probably like 40 because
Yes.
so much has happened.
Yeah.
And I think that the key thing I think, we're in an FMCG category, but I think online, it's almost like a super FMCG category that
Yeah.
things are almost changing on a daily basis.
Well, I think in your sector in particular, in all sectors in the online space, but I think in your sector in particular, having that dialogue with your customer is perhaps the most important thing, and you don't
Yeah.
have that in a retail space. You
No,
don't, that level of engagement, you don't get because you can't be at the shelf.
no.
And even
Actually, well, you
doing that,
can now if you've got with some technology, if you've got AR and QR codes and things
yeah.
like that, you can almost be there, but not in quite the same way. But
It,
it's getting, I think it's getting closer and closer. I think that relationship gap will close a lot in the next probably 5 years.
yeah. But
And I think,
there's still a difference in that if
yeah,
you'll have to rely upon the physical action of a
yeah,
customer in order
yeah,
to do something, whilst in the online environment, it's about give when it comes to
mm,
content,
yeah,
and then you're in the position where you might be able to ask for something,
yeah,
and it's about I think we all become entertainers, don't we?
yeah. I think they call it earned media or something.
Yeah,
Is that the
yeah,
right term?
that's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. So big plans for the business when it comes to online. So
Yeah,
big movement in that area. You've got the DNA product, so you've with the customization. How else are you planning to be a market leader? Because there's some big players in the marketplace. Some
yeah.
of them got profile. I mean, you've got a really good brand, right? So that's great. But how do you plan on winning in the category?
Look, I know the answer to that. I know what I think it's about. I did a talk once about innovate or die, and I
Yeah,
think that's the key. You've got to keep innovating. Um, Sometimes you can be the first. I remember 2005, six. We launched a whole range of products with Marvel, Superman, Supergirl, The Simpsons, and so on. And it went into retail and it bombed because basically at the time the association between, although all the product was very healthy and it was very innovative, the association between licenses and nutrition was that it would be unhealthy and not good for you, particularly as we were targeting children. We had like 100% fruit bars, fruit smoothies,
yeah,
chewable vitamins, gummies, etc., etc. Whereas nowadays, there's some big brands that have done similar deals, and those have been very successful. So I think a lot of it is you could be too innovative,
yeah,
and you can be too early. So I think it's about looking at trends. It's about analyzing data. It's about taking a punt, taking a chance on something.
yeah,
So we've just, like I said, the DNA probably one of the first in the category. I think maybe the only one in the category to have done that.
yeah,
We're also doing a lot with gummies. So we knew that was going to be a big thing. We tried it in 2005. It failed. 20 years later, nearly, it's come back again, and we've
yeah.
developed. I think that some of the best gummies on the market. We've we've looked outside of the normal supply chain to make that happen.
Mm.
And I think the other thing that we're doing, we've always had ambassadors, as I call them. So Mark Foster was my first one, the Olympic swimmer, and he's still a customer today. But we've never paid them or given free product. And I think that authenticity is something that we've got that I don't believe other brands have in this category, where they're paying either in product or in hard cash
Yeah.
for people to represent their brand. And I think that ultimately might be our opportunity, because I think consumers are beginning to look for authenticity when they're making a purchase.
It's interesting that what you're saying about the sort of sports icons, and particularly in your sector. There have been in the well, and you'll know this way more than I do, but in sports supplements and vitamin market, they've been using some of these guys for quite a long time now. And in many ways, sport and sport product, sport icons and sport product have been right at the forefront of influencer marketing before it was ever called influencer marketing. And of
Yeah,
course, these days
Daley
there is
Thompson was the original with Lucozade, I think.
yeah, I think, well, in the UK it was. And of course, Nike have built an entire business off the back of product endorsement. I mean,
Yeah,
when you look at the history behind that, and if you ever the great book Shoe Dog by Phil
yeah,
Knight, that whole history behind that, the product endorsement was ran all the way through that. And we're living in an age now where everybody wants to be a celebrity, it seems like that. And actually, it's no longer about column inches or what they did in sport. It's about their social media following. So it's an entirely different environment. The other thing that just now you touched upon, and it occurred to me in this conversation and looking what the business has done before in the past, is you guys are pioneers. So you did this stuff. You were early into the marketplace, right? Into the nutrition marketplace. You with the product endorsement side with Marvel and those type of things, you were very early in on that. You've been early in on other products. How does it feel being a pioneer? You're getting the arrows in the back sometimes because other people seem to have ridden the wave that you've pushed ahead.
yeah.
And how's that felt at times?
I mean, look, sometimes it's really frustrating, that you say somebody goes, "Oh, this protein bar," and I was like, "It's so innovative." I'm like, "I did that bar in '99," or the ready-to-drink protein shakes. We were doing those with Tesco in 2002, three.
Yeah.
The gummies, like I said, 20 years ago. So, I mean, what annoys me more is when bigger brands kind of have tried to steal some of our product names, and then that becomes more annoying. To be fair, but I guess there's nothing you can do about it. I'm one of these people that I try and live in the today rather than look back at what could have been.
Yeah.
Because I think you just drive yourself mad. But I guess maybe there'll be a footnote, in sports nutrition history somewhere. This guy never succeeded, but he had some great ideas.
Well, listen, you have been succeeding. You've been in business for 30 years. You've developed a
Yeah,
good brand. So
yeah,
please don't knock yourself, will you? Because I think you've
yeah.
done an outstanding job, particularly with
Thanks.
some of the other players in the marketplace. There's a lot of money being invested in developing
Huge
some of
amounts.
your
Yeah.
competitors, and you're still up there. You're still right at the front. So that's great work. So I guess the final question that I've got for you
Mm.
is you remain a pioneer, particularly with the new product that you've got
Mm.
that's in marketplace. And we see that being used in medicine as well, where you adapt a medicine specifically to the biochemistry of the individual. And you're doing that now
Yeah,
with your product, right? Which I
yeah.
find absolutely fascinating. I think it's the natural step forward. Um, so in doing that, do you believe that that's going to be able to position you as the market leader?
I think it goes back to what the previous thing. The likelihood is, as I start to see what I'd say some significant momentum, somebody else who's probably better financed, VC backed, whatever, will just come in and kind of jump over me, and maybe even do it better than I would have done. But that's the risk. I mean, I could stay still and do nothing, or I can keep pushing forward and hope that what I'm doing will not only benefit my customer, but also hopefully in some way, small way benefit the business as well.
Yeah.
And that maybe I'll have enough time between me doing something innovative and everybody else jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
That I've made enough strides to kind of keep that position.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think what you've done is more than admirable. You've been a market leader in so many different ways over 30 years. Market leaders can be the first to market, and you were the first to market for many of your products. You've created a fantastic brand. You continue to have a thriving business in a challenging sector because you were really hit by COVID as well. You were big in retail,
Yeah,
not so much online. So you've gone.
I mean, we lost.
Through
I'd say over 90% of our business during COVID.
Yeah, I mean,
between export and retail. So,
and you're still here, Daniel.
Yeah, well, again, you either got to double down or just give up. So I'm kind of the double down kind of guy, and I think I get that from my parents. My dad, I think in the 80s there was a big recession. He nearly lost his pharmacy at that. They had a retail pharmacy, and my mum left school at 16. And has always been very entrepreneurial, despite a lot of health issues that she's had. And I think the generation that we're probably the same generation is that I think that you're just very much more influenced by your parents, maybe the current gen. Like my kids, I don't think I have a huge influence on them relative to how my parents did. I think they get influenced by so many other things now, their peers, social media, and so on. So I think I was very lucky in being like a child of the 70s and 80s, where certain principles and ways of doing things, it was like just instilled in you.
Yeah. Those values have certainly kept you moving. And being a leader in your field. And look, I think it's incredibly admirable. And I'd like to read the book. When you sit back at the end of your career, whenever that may be, whatever you want to do with the business, you hand it down to your family, whether you end up selling it, whatever you end up doing with the business. I would encourage you to write the book.
Well, we have a magazine that we publish every quarter, and the next issue we've got Aaron Taylor-Johnson on the front cover, who's going to be the main character in the new Marvel film Craven. And we're actually doing a tie-up with the DNA product with that film, saying he unlocks his inner superhero, and we're saying unlock yours with our DNA product.
Yeah, and I think the DNA product is fantastic. And I do think that is from an outsider's perspective, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I think marketing messaging perspective, and at heart, I really am a marketeer. When I look at that, I think it's a great story to have, and I can pretty much see the campaign in front of me right now. So
help me out. We haven't finished the artwork yet, so any ideas are welcome.
Well, that's for another conversation.
Yeah.
So look, Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. It's a privilege to hear about your journey, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot longer. The business is going to thrive. I'm certain of it. 30 years. We haven't even touched on the B Corp side of the business, which I personally find fascinating, and it really leads to the authenticity of the business. So perhaps for another conversation, that one. But look, let's keep in contact.
Yeah, 100%.
I need to wish you luck or good fortune with bioenergy, because you have it in abundance. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. It's been a privilege.
Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye bye.
Cheers.